Speech and debate has been a quintessential part of my life for all of high school. As a member, I have made innumerable friends and learned even more lessons. Many of these lessons come from fellow competitors in rounds. I compete in an event called Original Oratory, where I write and perform an original speech. Now imagine being a competitor, sitting in a high school on a Saturday, hearing countless speech on any number of subjects, like you are here today. So without further ado, an original oratory, competitive humility. So my friend and I are rapidly approaching the end of the Unit 2 biology test. Being fairly confident in the material, we were both hoping for high scores. But which would be higher? I turn in my Scantron and wait for it to be graded. Sooner than expected, it's back on my desk, ready to be viewed. And so is his. Quickly glancing at both papers, I feel my heart swell. By just 1 point, I got the higher score. Attempting to stay calm, I look down at my desk, a smile pulling at the corners of my mouth. When I next look up, my teacher is standing right before me, wearing a smile just as wide. Now, he isn't your average teacher, and what he would next declare was perhaps the weirdest statement I have ever heard. He said, "I love it when hard work is aptly rewarded. Congratulations. But do you know what's incredibly sexy?" And he handed me a sticky note with one word written on it. Humility. Naturally, I was confused, and later he and I discussed the odd statement. His use of the word sexy caught me completely off guard. It provided ample amounts of hilarity, but also acted as the catalyst for analysis around the idea of being humble. I myself am a very competitive person and find ways to compete about anything under the sun. Anyone interested in a race to the cafeteria? My teacher, on the other hand, does not support such mentality, in favor of a more cooperative and humble path. Both styles alone lead to various benefits, but why should we settle for just one? We so often set competition and humility at odds with each other, treating them as though we are only permitted to possess one at a time, when this is simply not true. Let us first examine competition and the benefits of having a competitive spirit. We will then explore the concept of humility and its many advantages, and finally, we can combine these two qualities, because at the end of the day, competition and humility are not mutually exclusive. Rather, they are mutually inclusive. Once we learn this, we walk away from every victory or defeat as true winners. Competition. Now, the activity or condition of competing, or the person or people with whom one is competing, the opposition. Speech and debate is the quintessential example of a competition, and a very difficult one at that, yet many of us still go. Why? As Gianni Versace stated, it is nice to have valid competition. It pushes you to do better. Competition brings out the best we can offer. When faced with opponents that prove especially difficult to take on, one must put in their best effort. For example, every speech that's given in original oratory and every other event at a speech meet is a product solely of the competitor's best work. After all, I want to win. This remains true for competitions of any and all magnitude. Take the race to space, for instance. In the 20th century, two superpower nations and Cold War rivals, the United States and Soviet Union, were engaged in a tight competition for superior spaceflight capability. Now, this was literally rocket science, so achieving such a feat could have taken a very long time. But the looming threat that the other country might succeed first pushed both nations to work as quickly and efficiently as possible. Thus, they both gained spaceflight technology. And the fuel that powered these space shuttles was not liquid hydrogen, but competition. In the end, competition is about you. After all, life is competitive. We are constantly striving to provide for ourselves, to get the best opportunities and achieve as high as possible. Whether we are searching for a job, engaging in sports, or applying to college, we are surrounded by competition, a driving force to do our best, so that we might finish on top. But a competitive spirit can rapidly evolve into a conceited spirit. While being focused on ourselves may help us get ahead, in the absence of humility, it can easily become an excess of arrogance and a lack of compassion for others. Through competition, I managed to score highly on my biology test, but how I acted after I received my score was just as important, if not more, than the score itself. Humility is the highest virtue, the mother of them all, as said by poet Alfred Tennyson. At its very base, humility is possessing a modest or low view of one's own importance. Easier said than done, right? My mom always told me that in conversation, people like to talk about themselves. So to promote conversation, ask about them and let them do the work for you. Simple. Except I'm a person too, and I like to talk about me. Finding a balance between focusing on ourselves and focusing on others proves an eternal struggle. But putting in the effort is more than worth it. Dr. Jeremy Dean, on his popular webpage, The Cyblog, lists 8 psychological benefits of being humble. Among these are better work performance and relationships, higher grades, and less prejudice. These stem from a lower sense of entitlement and a higher regard and acceptance of others. And the concept of humility is far from hidden or obscure in today's society. The Christian faith uses humility as a vehicle to God's forgiveness. It is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, and in Buddhism, it is the core avenue of the 4 Noble Truths. The major religions of the world all preach the central message that humility is of the utmost importance. Outside of religious practice, modesty is highly valued as well, but perhaps one of the greatest examples of a humble person comes from religion. Siddhartha Gautama, better known as the Buddha, was raised in a palace, never leaving its walls or traveling the world. Thus, he was ignorant of the pain that peasants around him relentlessly endured. When he finally witnessed all this pain and suffering and hardship and death, he gave up all worldly possessions in favor of teaching others the path to enlightenment. The Buddha left behind not only lasting impacts on his world, but also a model of what genuine humility might look like. A focus on others, valuing of himself as equal or even below those with which he interacted. And yet, being too humble can be a detriment as well. Someone who is excessively modest cares so much for others that their own agenda is never attended to. They become shy, unimpactful, a doormat on which other people can walk all over. No one wants to be a doormat, and no one wants to be overly arrogant through competition either. Thus, the best way to avoid these 2 extremes is to combine competition and humility, to become the humble competitor. This past August, Olympic swimmer Katie Ledecky obliterated the world record in the women's 800-meter freestyle, finishing more than 6.5 seconds ahead of her competition. A very impressive margin. But immediately after the race, Ledecky did not brag about her victory. She focused on others. In her interviews, Ledecky spoke only of her teammates and of the experience in Rio. "I just had a lot of fun this week," she said, "not only in the pool, but just with my teammates. The memories mean more than the medals to me here. I'm just so proud of my teammates and all that we have accomplished this last week." Ledecky's humility is just as inspiring as her ability to swim. In the same way, humility was the name of the game at the Academy Awards. For the final Oscar, a mistake was made, and the wrong movie was announced as the winner. The team behind this movie made their way to the stage, and the producers began to speak, but there was commotion in the background. Soon, word got out. A different movie, titled Moonlight, had won the award. But the losing group did not sulk off the stage. Instead, this man, Jordan Horowitz, went up to the microphone and said, "I'm going to be really thrilled to hand this to my friends at Moonlight." Horowitz had just lost the award, but regardless, he showed the power and the grace behind true humility. On the other hand, good competitors who lack humility are difficult for us to support because while they may be good at their craft, putting up with their arrogance is no easy task. Take Lance Armstrong, for instance. This road racing cyclist was found to be using performance-enhancing drugs and was thus stripped of his 7 Tour de France victories. Reporter Julie McCurr of the New York Times frequently covered Armstrong's races and stated that the bicyclist was arrogance itself. There's an obvious difference here between Armstrong's competitiveness alone, focusing only on himself, and the humble yet competitive spirit of Horowitz and Ledecky, focusing on others as well as themselves. In moderation, these 2 qualities can be beneficial, but without the other, competition can evolve into conceitedness, and humility can evolve into obscurity. Hence, balancing the 2 is not only beneficial, but necessary. Because in the end, Usain Bolt wants to run the fastest, Tom Brady wants to win the Super Bowl, Leonardo DiCaprio wants to win another Oscar, Hillary Clinton wanted to win the election, and I want to win original oratory. We are all driven to succeed. The desire to come out victorious motivates competitors to do their best. But when we win, staying humble is the true mark of not only a great competitor, but of a great person. By not bragging, accepting our own weaknesses, and valuing the strengths and opinions of others, we can better ourselves. Through humility, we gain something. We gain perspective, both that of ourselves and the perspective of others, how we perceive a situation enriched with an understanding of how others are affected by it. Imagine what the world can be like, not if, but when. We combine a sense of self within competition and a sense of others within humility. I may have gotten the better test score in biology, and that felt pretty awesome. But staying humble about my success, difficult though it was, allowed my friend to feel confident about his own score. And now, I'm learning the most valuable lesson that has nothing to do with biology. The lesson that the best victories are those which empower your peers, along with yourself. The lesson that being the humble competitor is incredibly sexy. Thank you.